The activity of big events over the last couple of days is simply crazy. I somehow remembered myself in the first weeks of the war when you were afraid to fall asleep because hundreds of events happened at lightning speed, and I slept for 3 hours a day, never putting down the phone, reading the news like crazy. Well, back then, sleeping was, of course, dangerous because missiles were hitting neighboring buildings and you could wake up to find your street already captured by the enemies. Anyway, I'm Maria Drutska, and today I will tell you about the important news on the last few days. How the Russian enemy finally captured Avdiivka, how the Kremlin regime released Alexei Navalny, and why the Russian shopping center in Izhevsk is on fire. A major fire occurred in Izhevsk at night. According to the regional emergency services, a production building was on fire. The area of fire was 3,500 square meters. As reported by the regional emergency services, the activity of the enterprise where the fire occurred is related to the production of professional cleaning and disinfecting items, and the cause of the fire is unknown. Of course, it's cleaning items, not missile being produced there, God forbid, which would then fly and kill civilian population of Ukraine. Oh, no, of course not. And cause of the fire is unknown. Maybe someone wanted to have a cup of tea or forgot to turn off the iron. Well, what are you laughing at? Anything can happen, and the main thing that it has already happened. The address was home to the chemical company Izhsyntes Himprom and the new home shopping center, which, according to media publication, was repurposed for drone production last year. By the way, here is some information for your reflection. I'm not hinting at anything, but the distance between the territories controlled by Ukraine and Izhevsk in a straight line is about 1,300 kilometers, which is somewhat greater than the specs of Ukrainian UAVs of long-range action. Therefore, if this is not a coincidence, then either sabotage against the enterprise was committed on the site in Russia, or Ukrainian drones can fly longer distance than previously was assumed. Before I continue, I want to thank all of you who send coffees and buy me a coffee and become patrons for this channel. Subscribe to my Twitter page also, where I post regular updates about the situation in Ukraine, and to my Instagram, where I show the daily life in Ukraine. The Kremlin regime released Navalny from prison where he was serving a 19-year sentence in a special regime colony near the Arctic Circle in Harp because he died. He was 47 years old. Russian opposition figure Alexei Navalny fell ill during a walk in the colony and almost immediately lost consciousness, reports the Russian Federal Prison Service. Initially, it was thought that a thrombus had detached, but then the colony informed Navalny's lawyer and mother that the cause was sudden death syndrome. I even didn't know such syndrome existed. To put it briefly, Putin killed Navalny. Many world leaders have stated this in their comments on the event. I was not a fan of Navalny, as were none of the Ukrainians. In many of his speeches, Navalny spoke against the return of the territories occupied by Russia. We well remember his notorious comment about Crimea not being a sausage sandwich to be flipped back and forth, among many other statements. You can watch the full video about Navalny that I made last year on my channel. I will leave a link in the description under this video. But as it was, Navalny opposed Putin and Putin's regime. He and his team conducted many investigations that exposed the corruption of Putin and his supporters. And ultimately, they killed a man they placed in jail. So the lawyer and mother of Alexei Navalny came to the morgue. It was closed, despite the colony's assurance that it was operating and Navalny's body was there. The lawyer called the phone number listed on the door. He was told Alexei's body is not in the morgue. In short, the body somehow disappeared. And then it was supposedly found, but now the investigative committee directly states that until the investigation is completed, Alexei's body will not be released to the relatives. It's as clear as day that the criminal regime of the Kremlin is simply delaying the transfer of the body to hide the cause of Navalny's murder. In his interview earlier, where he was asked what would happen if he were killed, he urged Russians to continue fighting and not give up. Not that they immediately started fighting on the streets of Russia, but in many cities, people took to streets and laid flowers in memory of the murdered Navalny. And what do you think? As of last night, at least 359 people were detained at the memorial actions for Alexei Navalny. The most detentions for laying flowers occurred in St. Petersburg, and in some police departments, lawyers were not even allowed there for a long time. Police in St. Petersburg are using batons and stun guns, although the detainees are not resisting. A worker at OVD Info told on air of current time program. According to him, the detainees are mostly charged with disobedience to the lawful demands of police officers. They are also being charged under the article for discrediting the armed forces of the Russian Federation. The detentions took place in 29 cities across Russia. Imagine, in St. Petersburg, even a priest was detained right outside his home. He was supposed to hold a memorial service for Navalny at the Solovetsky Stone. This was reported by Novaya Gazeta, citing his wife. Well, if we were hoping for any kind of movement and protest after such a loud murder of the most famous Russian opposition figure, when even President Biden once stated that Putin would face terrible consequences if Navalny dies in prison, when the leaders of most Western countries directly called it a murder by the Kremlin, then we can expect nothing, because the impotent opposition movement in Russia is incapable of actually doing anything. Now, about Avdiivka. Ukrainian forces left Avdiivka to avoid encirclement and moved to the new defense lines, said Commander-in-Chief Alexander Syrsky. The fierce, bloody battle for Avdiivka lasted 4 months. Russians began a large-scale offensive on Avdiivka in October 2023. But early February, the situation became critical, and the Russians almost managed to cut off the supply routes of the city's defenders. Avdiivka is a small industrial city very close to Donetsk, captured by pro-Russian and Russian militants almost 10 years ago, in the spring of 2014. In 2021, Avdiivka had a population of 32,000 people. It took the world's most powerful Russian army 10 years to capture a settlement with a pre-war population of 32,000 people. Of course, the Russians presented it as a victory of victories, capturing the miserable ruins of what remained of Avdiivka, as if they had captured Berlin in its time. Russia also made no secret that they wanted to take Avdiivka before the re-election of President Vladimir Putin in March 2024. For Ukraine, Avdiivka was important as a major railway junction, a powerful industrial center, and as a constant potential threat to Donetsk. President Joe Biden believes that the loss of Avdiivka, which Ukrainian forces left after several months of fighting, was partly due to American lawmakers who failed to approve emergency aid to Ukraine. Attempts to provide extraordinary foreign assistance to US allies have been at an impasse in Congress for several months. Ukraine was forced to retreat from Avdiivka after its military had to ration ammunition due to reduced supplies as a result of Congress inaction, leading to Russia's first noticeable success in recent months, the White House statement said. Just within 4 months of the active phase of the Avdiivka defensive operation, the losses of Russia exceeded 47,000 killed. Also, hundreds of units of enemy combat equipment were destroyed, reported the commander of the Operational Strategic Group of Forces Tavria, Alexander Tarnavsky. During the battles for Avdiivka, Russia's losses from October 10, 2023 are personnel 47,000, tanks 364, artillery systems 248, combat armored vehicles 748, aircraft 5. Meanwhile, Ukraine keep fighting, and I'm convinced that one day we will return all our territories back. That's it for today, and I want to thank all of you for supporting Ukraine, watching Ukrainian content, and if you like this video, you can support the channel's development on Patreon or buy me a coffee. See you soon, and Slava Ukraini!